Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today I'm going to show you how to make pea soup. It's going to look terrible, but it's going to taste delicious. And I cook a lot of my vegetables this way using an immersion blender to make a soup stock. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and the peas are starting to finish up. So like when the peas start to yellow, the pods are turning yellow, they're starting to form seeds. So the peas are going from nice sweet taste to kind of being starchy. These are shelling peas. You don't eat the shell, you pull the peas out. These are delicious, so that's going to be part of the ingredients. First thing I want to do is go through my garden, and I'm going to take all the snap peas, edible pods, which is this bush right in the middle. And that's going to be the base for most of the soup. So let me gather these up, and then we'll progress to each ingredient, and I'll show you how I use the immersion blender, which you can find in the product link in the video, to make soup. You can freeze this too, so it's a great way to really use all the production out of your garden. Again, these are sugar snap peas. You just want to make sure you take off the tip right here where it attaches to the vine. Everything is going to get blended up with the immersion blender. Edible pods, edible peas, these are still really, really sweet. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's getting to that point where the plant's beginning to die out at the bottom. It's not going to really do a whole lot more. So I want to get all the peas now, and I want to make something out of it. So this whole plant's going to get ripped out. This is what we're making today. Absolutely delicious. The colors can go wrong, but if you love peas, you're going to love this soup. I took all the peas off the plant, pulled the plant out. I leave the roots in the ground. They're great for the garden. And now I have space open for my shishitos to start getting the sunlight, and these will take over as the warm weather crops for the rest of the summer. We're going to come back and get the shelling peas. The peas here being left to dry. I'm going to let the pods dry outdoors, obviously, and I'm going to save these peas and plant them in the fall. Here's another sugar snap plant. Lots of pods still. Plant is starting to die off. I'm going to just take all of these. We're also going to chop up and put carrots. So this is technically a pea and carrot soup. Carrots that I took out of the garden last week. But I really want to get all these now because these pods are still really, really sweet. They're going to make a wonderful soup base. It's up to you. I want to add in some onion and garlic. So the onions here aren't quite ready, but I'm going to take one of them, and I will be putting most of this onion into there, and it will also get blended up with the immersion blender. Also going to put in some garlic. It really is the end of the season technically for pea plants, so they're just not going to grow anymore. These are snow peas. Typically they're really flat. I'm going to take all of these, even though they look, you know, not green, they're beat up. This one's a little bit rubbery, I won't use that one, but most of these are really sweet, so it's perfect. They're a perfect base for the soup. Some more of the sugar snaps over here. That should be plenty to make the base of the soup. Also picked up the garlic that I had drying for about a week out in another part of my garden. So let me finish this up. These are the shelling peas, and I'm going to shell them, and I'm going to add those peas after the soup is pretty much done. I don't want these peas to get mushy. They're going to be a different ingredient, pea-wise, in the whole soup. And they look just like this. You basically pop open the shells, and the peas are delicious and nice and sweet. I've tried to puree these before. They're a little bit stringy, so I'd like to use the snow peas, the sugar snap peas for the base. And then the shelling peas are going to just add all these little peas that are going to be delicious throughout the soup. We are ready to make the base for the pea and carrot soup. Prepared snow peas, snap peas, completely edible, pod-wise and pea-wise. An onion, just cut it in half. That's my immersion blender. I don't recommend a specific brand, but an immersion blender works really, really well for processing all the food coming out of your garden. And then a couple cloves of garlic in there. You want to put in about, I don't know, 16 ounces to 32 ounces of liquid in there. I'm using chicken stock. You can use whatever you want. That should be enough to really soften up the peas and everything, and then we're going to puree it. Add in the onions and the garlic. One more piece there. Whoa, let's get that into there. Just press it all down. And now look, there's a piece of the onion that's dried out. Just get rid of that. Doesn't need to look pretty because once you puree it down, it's going to be absolutely delicious. And then we're putting in the rest of the peas. See if I can do this one-handed without spilling any. You can always add in more liquid if you want to. 1 pinch of salt, don't overdo it. You don't want to over-season anything when you're pureeing it down. You want to kind of wait till the end, but a little bit of salt won't matter. And then we're just going to put it on high, bring this up to a boil, let it go to a rolling boil for 15 to 20 minutes. That will soften the peas up, and then I'll show you the next step. In about 15 minutes, Everything's nice and soft. Immersion blender, that's how it gets its name. And you're just going to move this around until everything is pureed down. Now, it's going to be a nice green. I've made this before with carrots pureed into there, and it looks terrible. It turns a brown color. So this could be the most awful looking soup ever, but it's going to be delicious. So just puree it down, and then I'm going to go out into the garden, get the rest of the peas, and get the carrots set up. And you're just going to puree it until it's totally smooth. One thing I forgot to mention is take the pot off the heat. It was over here on my right. Because this gets thick, if you leave it on the heat, it's going to bubble and splash up and you can actually get burned. So just move the container or the pot to a burner that was not on. And that's the beautiful base. You could add in more liquid if you want, just to thin it up a little bit. But I like the way this looks. Might be a little bit thick, so maybe 8 more ounces of the chicken stock. You could use vegetable stock, you could use water. Some people even use beer. Looks pretty good. Shelling peas from my garden, carrots from my garden, and the beauty about this is I didn't wash anything. There's no organic sprays on here or otherwise. I can just use everything I want out of my garden because I know what I put on it. If you don't have shelling peas, go ahead and use frozen peas. That will work. You want to chop the carrots up really fine. We're not going to really cook these down and soften them up too much. The soup is off the heat right now. I'll talk more about that in a second. Chop up your carrots right at the end, because if you leave them out like this, they kind of oxidize and turn brown. And the reason the soup can go horribly wrong is in the past I've pureed carrots into it, so green and orange make brown, and it really looks unappealing. The soup does sometimes look a little bit like vomit, but I'm telling you, it's absolutely delicious. When you pick the shelling peas, you want to make sure they're nice and green, that the skin is soft. If they start getting a little bit rough, lighter yellow, the peas usually become too starchy and they don't really taste good individually. You're going to pop all the peas out. I'll set all that up, get them into the pot in a second. If you have a lot of peas that are kind of past their prime, the shelling peas, you could shell them and throw them into the soup too to make the pea base. It's perfectly fine. Not as sweet, but they do add to the soup. Also found 2 jalapenos while I was out there. Slice them up. I don't mind a little heat in my soup. Alright, so let me finish this and we'll get to the next step. So at this point, the soup has cooled down a little bit. It's still really hot. Just put it on low. We're just going to bring it up until it bubbles a couple of times. First, we're going to put in the carrots. And again, I've made this a lot, and to keep it from going horribly wrong, this is the order that I recommend you do it. This way, everything stays in color and it looks a little bit better. And again, I thought that this was a little bit too thick, so I'm going to add in 8 ounces of water. And let me go over here and grab the jalapenos, and I'm going to add those in too. And we're just going to wait for this to come to a light kind of bubbling. Because it's so thick, it doesn't really boil, but you'll see the heat come up and you can kind of get a sense of how it looks. I know it doesn't look the best, but it tastes absolutely delicious. So let's let this go till it gets up to that slight bubbling, and then we're going to just take it off the heat and wait about 15 minutes for the carrots and the peas to soften up. I decided I wanted more carrots and peas in there. This would also be the time I forgot to add it, but another dash of salt. This is when you want to salt it. It's pretty much the volume that it's going to stay at, so you can't really over salt it. Sometimes if you salt something that reduces down early, it becomes over concentrated with the salt, but this is going to be perfect. We're just going to let it bubble a few times and take it off the heat for 15 minutes. Not bad looking. So we're going to finish it off with some chopped carrot, some more peas. You can add a pinch of pepper to it to your liking, maybe a pinch of salt. And you can keep this vegetarian and vegan by just not adding cheese or chicken stock. And I think that looks pretty good. Follow these steps. It'll keep it from really turning this terrible brownish color, but it's absolutely delicious. I highly recommend it, and check out the product link in the video for immersion blenders. This is what's going to be for dinner tonight. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.